Thank you, Brent. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I want to say three things to you. Number one, now is the single best time and best opportunity to defeat Obamacare. Number two, this is a fight we can win. And number three, only the American people can win this fight. Why is now the best time to defeat Obamacare? Well, the reason is simple. There is bipartisan consensus. Obamacare isn't working. The wheels are coming off. The lead Senate author, Democrat Max Baucus, has described it as a huge train wreck. Major labor unions are one after another asking the president, please let us out of Obamacare. James Hoffa, the president of the Teamsters, has said Obamacare is destroying the 40-hour work week that is the backbone of the American middle class. And even President Obama has been forced to admit failure when he unilaterally and contrary to law granted a waiver to every big corporation in America to delay Obamacare, the employer mandate, until after the next election. Now that is a powerful concession that Obamacare isn't working, because if Obamacare were working, if it were a good thing, President Obama would want it to kick in full before the next election. The fact that he wants it after the next election is a tacit admission this thing is broken. And it also raises the obvious question. If President Obama is willing to grant a waiver to giant corporations, why won't he grant the same waiver to hardworking American families? That leads to the second point. This is a fight we can win. We've heard lots of speeches about Obamacare. We've had lots of votes about Obamacare, none of which had any chance of passage. Here's what I believe should happen. 60 days from today, on September 30th, the continuing resolution that funds the federal government expires. The House of Representatives should pass a continuing resolution that funds the federal government in its entirety, every aspect of the federal government, except for Obamacare. And that continuing resolution should attach the legislative language that I have already filed in the U.S. Senate to defund Obamacare, to prohibit spending money on Obamacare, and to prohibit both discretionary and mandatory spending on Obamacare. Now, the next step, we know what will happen after the House passes that continuing resolution. President Obama and Harry Reid will scream and yell that the mean, nasty Republicans are threatening to shut down the government. And at that point, we have to stand up and win the fight. We have to go and make the argument. We have voted to fund the government. We want to keep the government open. We don't want a partial temporary government shutdown. Why is President Obama threatening to shut down the government in order to force Obamacare down the American people's throats? President Obama is willing to grant a waiver to giant corporations. Why is President Obama willing to shut down the federal government in order to deny that same waiver to hardworking American families? If we get 41 Republicans to stand together in the Senate, or 218 Republicans to stand together in the House, we can win this fight. Not another symbolic vote, which we've had far too many of, but this is where the rubber meets the road. The next 60 days, the decision will be made whether or not we continue to fund Obamacare. And that leads to my third and final point. Only the American people can win this fight. Look, if conventional Washington rules apply, this fight is unwinnable. If the only forum in which arguments are going to be advanced is closed-door meetings in the Senate and House, we will not have the votes. We don't have the votes in the Senate right now. We don't have the votes in the House. But I believe we can change that. If in the next 60 days, hundreds of thousands or millions of Americans stand up and demand of their elected officials do the right thing, that will change this public policy debate in Washington. There's a national website that was launched this week, don'tfundit.com, don'tfundit.com. In a matter of 5 days, 125,000 Americans have signed a national petition on don'tfundit.com. And if we see hundreds of thousands or millions of Americans lighting up the phone to their elected representatives saying, stand up and do the right thing. Follow through on your principles. Don't just talk a good game when you're home in state. Actually stand up and weather the fight. Look, there are many fights in Washington, and I think you should pick your battles. There is no battle more important than this opportunity right now to finally defund Obamacare. Obamacare is the biggest job killer in this country. It is hurting the economy. It is causing vulnerable workers, young people, Hispanics, African Americans, single moms to have their hours forcibly reduced. It is driving up the cost of your health care premiums. It isn't working. It's hurting health care, and now is the opportunity to do it. If the American people rise up and hold our elected officials accountable, and the people should hold every one of us accountable, including me, that's how we win this fight, and I am encouraged by this tremendous coalition of grassroots leaders across the country. In the next 60 days, I believe we're going to see a tsunami of the American people rising up to demand that Congress defund Obamacare.